My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I stood at the altar in a rented tux that felt 2 sizes too tight, staring at the double doors at the back of the church. 200 people sat behind me, waiting. The organ music had already looped twice. "She's just running late," my best man, Tyler, whispered beside me. "Brides are always late." 20 minutes late. I asked. Sophia's always been dramatic about entrances. "Remember graduation?" I tried to laugh. Nothing came out. My father sat in the front row, hands folded in his lap, jaw tight the way it got when he was worried but didn't want to show it. My mother kept turning around to check the doors, her smile getting thinner each time. Then my phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. I wasn't supposed to check it. Not now. Not standing at the altar in front of everyone I loved. But something in my chest told me to look. "Sophia, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I'm marrying Marcus. It's already done. We did it privately this morning. Please don't hate me." I read it 3 times before the words made sense. "Ethan." Tyler's voice sounded far away. "Man, what's wrong? You're white as a sheet." I couldn't answer him. I just handed him the phone. Tyler read it, and I watched his face change from confusion to horror in real time. "This has to be a joke," he said. "Some kind of sick joke." "Marcus Vance," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. "She married Marcus Vance." "You're Marcus? From college?" I nodded. The church started to feel very small and very loud at the same time. Whispers had already begun spreading through the pews. Someone had noticed my face, noticed Tyler's hands trembling around my phone. "Ethan, what's going on?" my mother called from the front row, panic rising in her voice. I didn't get the chance to answer. The pastor cleared his throat. "Should we give it a few more minutes?" "No," I said. "No, we shouldn't." I don't remember deciding to speak. The words just came out, flat and hollow, carrying through the microphone clipped to my collar. "There's not going to be a wedding today." The church went dead silent. Then the whispers turned into gasps, into hands covering mouths, into 200 people staring at me like I was a car crash they couldn't look away from. My father stood up first. He didn't say anything. He just walked straight to me, put a hand on my shoulder, and looked me dead in the eyes. "What happened?" he asked quietly. "Just for me." "She left me for Marcus," I said. "She married him. This morning, while I was getting ready to marry her." I watched something break behind my father's eyes. Not surprise exactly, more like the specific pain of watching your son go through something you can't fix. "I'm sorry, Ethan," was all he managed. That's when Grace pushed through the crowd. My little sister, 24 years old and built like a hurricane when she was angry, shoved past aunts and cousins to get to me. "Where is she?" Grace demanded. "Where is that?" "Grace." I grabbed her arm before she could finish. "Not here. Not here. Ethan, she just humiliated you in front of everyone we know." "I know," I said. "Believe me, I know." Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. She was too angry to cry. She grabbed my hand instead, the way she used to when we were kids and I'd walk her home from school. "I've got you," she said. "Just breathe. I've got you." I thought about the first time I met Sophia. 3 years ago, at a mutual friend's dinner party. She'd spilled red wine on my shirt and laughed so hard apologizing that I ended up laughing too. We talked until 2 in the morning that night, about everything and nothing. I remember thinking, this is the kind of person I could build a life with. I'd been wrong. "Ethan." Grace's voice snapped me back. "We need to get you out of here. Everyone's staring." She was right. The whispers had grown into full conversations now, guests standing, some already reaching for their phones, because of course someone was already texting the news to people who weren't there. "Give us the room," my father said to the pastor, his voice carrying an authority I rarely heard from him. The pastor nodded and began ushering people gently toward the doors, though half of them were still craning their necks to get one last look at me. "Come on," Grace said, pulling my arm. "Let's go." I looked at the altar one more time. The flowers Sophia had picked out herself, white roses and eucalyptus. The arch we'd spent 2 months choosing. All of it built for a moment that was never going to happen. "Ethan." My father's hand found my shoulder again. You don't have to explain anything to anyone right now. Just walk. So I walked. Past Tyler, who looked like he wanted to say something and couldn't find the words. Past my mother, who was crying quietly into a tissue. Past cousins and co-workers and family friends who stared at me like I was already a story they'd tell later. Remember when Ethan got left at the altar? I walked down the aisle I was supposed to walk down as a married man. Except now I was walking it alone, in a tux that suddenly felt like a costume for a role I no longer had. The church doors opened into gray afternoon light. Grace kept her grip on my arm the entire way to the car, like she thought I might collapse if she let go. Maybe I would have. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood on the church steps, staring at nothing, while somewhere across town, Sophia was starting her new life with the one person I never expected to lose her to. My life, the one I'd spent 3 years building toward this exact day, had just ended in the space of a single text message. And I had no idea yet how far the wreckage would reach. 3 weeks after the wedding that never happened, I woke up on my office couch with a stack of unopened mail and a bottle of whiskey lying empty on the floor. My phone had 11 missed calls. 4 were from clients. 2 were from Grace. The rest were numbers I didn't recognize. "You look terrible," Grace said, letting herself into my office with the spare key I'd forgotten she had. "Thanks. Great start to the morning." "It's 2 in the afternoon, Ethan." I sat up, rubbing my face. The Hendrix Project blueprints were still spread across my desk from, I honestly couldn't remember when. Days blurred together lately. "Did you call the Hendrix family back?" Grace asked, already knowing the answer. "I'll call them tomorrow." "That's what you said 3 days ago." "Grace." "No." She crossed her arms. "I've watched you drink yourself numb for 3 weeks. I've watched you miss meetings, ignore emails, let this firm you worked so hard for fall apart. I'm done watching." "She left me at the altar," I said. "Forgive me for not being in a rush to update spreadsheets." "I'm not asking you to be fine. I'm asking you to stop pretending you didn't see this coming." That stopped me cold. What's that supposed to mean? Grace sat down across from me, her expression softer now, but no less honest. "Ethan, Sophia stopped coming to family dinners 4 months ago. She cancelled on Mom's birthday. She was on her phone every time I saw you two together, and you kept making excuses for her. She was busy. She was pulling away, and you knew it. You just didn't want to see it." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. But somewhere underneath the anger, I knew she wasn't. "Why didn't you say something?" I asked. "I tried. Twice. You told me I was being paranoid." I stared at the blueprints on my desk, the ones for a project I hadn't touched in weeks. "So what? This is my fault now." "No," Grace said firmly. "It's not your fault. But you have to stop drowning in whiskey and start asking why. Because something doesn't add up." "What do you mean?" "Marcus Vance didn't just win Sophia over with charm, Ethan. Have you looked at what he's been posting? The Ashworth Tower contract? That's the same design language you were developing last year." My stomach dropped. I pulled up my laptop right there, hands still unsteady, and searched Marcus's firm. The renderings for the Ashworth Tower filled the screen, the layered glass facade, the courtyard integration, the sustainable water system. My designs. Almost exactly. "That's impossible," I said. Nobody outside the firm had access to those files. "Nobody except who, Ethan?" I already knew the answer before she finished the sentence. "Daniel. My business partner for 6 years. The man who'd been in every late-night meeting, every client pitch, every private folder on our shared server. I called him before I even thought it through." "Ethan," Daniel answered, too calm for someone who should have been surprised. "Look, I've been meaning to call. Did you give Marcus Vance my Ashworth designs?" Silence on the line. "Daniel, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." I heard him exhale. "Marcus offered me a partnership. A real one, not the scraps you've been giving me for years while you take all the credit. He needed a strong concept fast for the Ashworth pitch. I gave him access. That's it. That's it." I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. "You handed him 3 years of my work like it was nothing." "It wasn't your work, Ethan. It was our firm's work. I contributed too. You leaked confidential files to my rival. The same rival who just married my fiancée. That's a coincidence, Daniel said, though his voice wavered slightly. I didn't know about Sophia. I was thinking about opportunity. Opportunity, I repeated, the word tasting bitter. You call betraying me an opportunity. I call it surviving, Daniel snapped. You've been coasting on your name for years while I did half the work behind the scenes. Marcus saw my value. You never did. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. Get out of the firm, Daniel. Today. You can't fire me. I'm a partner. Watch me. I hung up before he could respond. Grace was standing by the window, arms still crossed, watching me with an expression somewhere between sympathy and vindication. He really did it, I said quietly. He really sold me out. I'm sorry, Ethan. It wasn't just Sophia. My voice cracked on the words. It was calculated. Daniel handed Marcus the exact thing he needed to look impressive, to look like the kind of man worth leaving me for. Grace crossed the room and put her hand on my shoulder. So now what? I looked down at the blueprints scattered across my desk, the ones Daniel had helped steal, the ones that built another man's rise while I sat here falling apart. Now, I said, I stopped drowning. I found my father in his workshop, sanding down an old cabinet door like the world hadn't just fallen apart around his son. You're going to wear a hole through that wood, I said. Keeps my hands busy. He didn't look up. Yours look like they need something to do too. I sat down on the stool across from his workbench, the smell of sawdust and varnish thick in the air. It used to calm me as a kid. Tonight it just made my head feel heavier. I want to ruin him, I said. Marcus, I want to expose every shady deal he's ever made. I have contacts who could dig into his financials. I could leak the Ashworth theft to every industry publication that'll listen. My father set down his sandpaper. And Sophia? She married a thief. Maybe she should know exactly what he is. So you'd tell her not to help her, but to hurt her. I didn't answer, because he wasn't wrong. Sit with that for a second, he said. Really sit with it. He stole from me, Dad. He used my work to look impressive enough that she chose him over me. Don't I get to fight back? There's a difference between fighting back and burning everything down because you're in pain. How would you know? My father wiped his hands on his apron and finally looked at me. Because I did exactly what you're planning 30 years ago. That caught me off guard. You never told me that. Not much to be proud of. He leaned against the workbench. I had a partner, Sal. We built the first version of this company together. He undercut me on a bid behind my back, took a client I'd worked 2 years to land. I found out, and I lost my mind. What did you do? I spent the next 4 years trying to destroy him. I called his clients. I spread word about his shady bookkeeping. I turned every mutual friend against him. And you know what happened? What? He went bankrupt. Lost everything. My father's voice was flat, tired. And so did I. Because I spent 4 years focused on his downfall instead of building my own company. 4 years I'll never get back. That's different. Sal went bankrupt because he deserved it. Maybe, but I didn't get anything out of it, Ethan. No joy, no peace. Just 4 wasted years and a business that almost went under because I wasn't paying attention to it. I stared at the cabinet door on his workbench. So what? I just let Marcus and Daniel win. I didn't say that. He sat down across from me. I'm saying revenge isn't the same as justice. Revenge costs you something. It always does. Before I could respond, the workshop door creaked open. Robert, you still got that lumber I asked about? I recognized the voice before I turned around. Whitfield, my old mentor from architecture school, the man who'd taught me everything about structural integrity before I even understood what integrity meant outside of buildings. Professor Whitfield, I said, standing. Ethan. He studied my face, and whatever he saw there made his expression soften. Heard about the wedding. I'm sorry, son. Word travels fast. Small industry. He glanced at my father, then back at me. You look like a man deciding something big. I'm thinking about exposing Marcus Vance. Publicly. For stealing my designs. For everything. Whitfield was quiet for a moment, running a hand along the edge of my father's workbench. "Let me tell you something I learned a long time ago," he said. "Don't build your future on someone else's ruins." That's easy to say when it's not your life falling apart. It's not easy to say. It's hard-earned. He met my eyes. Anger feels like fuel, Ethan, but fuel burns fast. What are you left with once is ruined, still standing in the wreckage of your own life, except now his is wrecked too. 2 ruins instead of 1. I sat back down, the weight of everything pressing into my chest. "So what am I supposed to do?" I asked. "Just let it go." "No," my father said. "You let go of him, not the situation. You take everything you're feeling right now and you build something with it instead of tearing something down." "Build what?" "Yourself," Whitfield said simply. "Start over. Somewhere new. Prove what you're capable of without Daniel, without Sophia, without needing Marcus to fail for you to succeed." I thought about the firm, still half collapsed with Daniel gone. My name dragged through whispers at every industry event since the wedding. I thought about starting from nothing. It terrified me, but for the first time in 3 weeks, it also felt like the only thing that made sense. "New firm," I said slowly, testing the words. "New district. No partners I can't verify down to the bone." "There it is," my father said, a small, proud smile breaking through. "It won't be easy," Whitfield added. "Rebuilding never is. But it'll be yours. Nobody can steal what you build after this, because you'll be watching every angle." I stood up, feeling something shift inside my chest. Not peace exactly, but direction. A place to put all this anger that wasn't Marcus's downfall or Sophia's regret. "I'm done trying to prove anything to people who already made their choice," I said. "I'm going to build something they can't touch." My father nodded slowly. "Now that sounds like my son." I looked at the cabinet door still sitting on the workbench, half finished, waiting for someone to care enough to see it through. For the first time since the wedding, I understood exactly how that felt. 8 months changes more than people expect. I stood on the top floor of my new office, glass walls overlooking a district I'd chosen specifically because nobody there knew my history. No whispers about the wedding. No pity glances. Just work. "You're staring out that window again," Isabel said, walking in with 2 coffees and setting one on my desk. "You do that a lot lately." "Just thinking." "About the Larkspur project or something else?" "Bit of both." Isabel had joined the firm 4 months ago, poached from a competitor after she saw one of our community housing designs at an industry showcase. She had this habit of asking questions I didn't always want to answer, but somehow never made me feel cornered by them. "Priya called this morning," I said. "She wants to fast-track funding for the Riverside project." "That's huge. She trusts you with that kind of capital after less than a year." "She trusts the numbers. Every building we've completed has come in on budget, passed every inspection, and the community engagement scores are the highest in the district." Funny how that happens when you actually care about the people living in what you build. Isabel sat on the edge of my desk. "Speaking of numbers not adding up, did you hear about Vance Development?" My chest tightened slightly at the name, though less than it used to. "What about them?" "The Ashworth Tower failed its second structural inspection. Cracks in the load-bearing supports. They're saying the water drainage system backs up during heavy rain because it was never properly integrated with the foundation." I set my coffee down slowly. That drainage system was supposed to route through a secondary channel. Did they redesign it? That's the thing. Sounds like they just copied the visual layout without understanding why it was built that way. I almost laughed, except there was nothing funny about it. Because Daniel handed Marcus half a blueprint. The concept, not the engineering behind it. You think Marcus knew that? Marcus never touched the technical side of anything. He wanted something that looked impressive enough to win the pitch. He never learned why it worked. Isabel studied my face. "You don't seem angry about this." "I'm not," I said, and meant it. "Not anymore. 8 months ago you would have been thrilled. 8 months ago I wanted to burn his life down myself." I looked back out the window. Now I just feel like watching something collapse under its own weight isn't the same as celebrating it. "That's oddly mature of you. Don't sound so surprised." She laughed, and for a second the office felt lighter than it had in a long time. My phone buzzed with a message from Grace. Heard Marcus's company might be facing a lawsuit from investors. You seeing this? I typed back, seeing it, staying out of it. 3 dots appeared, then, proud of you. I set the phone down and Isabel raised an eyebrow. Grace. She's been keeping tabs on the Vance situation. Can't say I blame her. And Sophia? Isabel asked carefully. Any word? I hesitated. Grace mentioned she ran into a mutual friend a few weeks ago. Said Sophia looked exhausted. Said Marcus has been under so much financial pressure that has been taking it out on everyone around him, including her. That's rough. I don't wish anything bad on her, I said. But I'm not going to pretend I feel sorry enough to reach out either. You don't owe her that. No, I don't. Isabel was quiet for a moment, studying the blueprint spread across my desk. The Riverside project, ambitious and community-centered, nothing like the glass towers Marcus built to impress investors who never had to live in them. Can I say something? She asked. Always. You're different than you were when I started here. Back then you worked like you were trying to prove something to people who weren't even watching anymore. And now? Now you work like you actually enjoy it. Like you're building this for yourself, not for anyone else's approval. She smiled. It's a good look on you. I felt something warm settle in my chest, something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Not for Sophia, not for anyone. Just quiet satisfaction in something I'd built with my own hands, on my own terms. Priya wants to meet Thursday about the Riverside funding, I said, changing the subject before it could go somewhere I wasn't ready for. You free? Wouldn't miss it. Isabel stood, grabbing her coffee. For what it's worth, Ethan, whatever's happening over at Vance Development, that's not your problem to fix or gloat over anymore. You've got enough good things happening right here. Yeah, I said, looking around my office. My name on the door, my designs on the walls, a firm built from nothing but 8 months of stubborn, quiet work. I think I finally do. She left, and I turned back to the window, watching the city stretch out below me. Somewhere across town, Marcus's empire was cracking under the weight of a foundation he never understood. Somewhere in that same city, Sophia was learning that the security she chose over me had never really been secure at all. None of that was my responsibility anymore. For the first time since the wedding, I wasn't waiting for anyone else's world to fall apart to feel like mine was whole. It already was. The news broke on a Tuesday morning, splashed across every industry outlet before I'd even finished my coffee. Ashworth Tower evacuated after structural failure. Vance Development faces investor exodus. Isabel burst into my office without knocking, phone already in her hand. Ethan, have you seen this? Seeing it right now. The whole East Wing shifted overnight. They evacuated 3 floors before dawn. No injuries, but the buildings condemned pending investigation. I scanned the article, my stomach tightening despite everything I'd told myself over the past 8 months. Do they know the cause? Preliminary reports say the load-bearing structure never matched the original engineering specs. Someone copied the design without understanding the calculations behind it. That's it. That's my drainage integration, my load distribution model, applied without the actual math that made it safe. My phone rang before I could say anything else. Priya's name flashed on the screen. Ethan, she said the moment I answered, I need you to brace yourself. Daniel just gave a statement to a local reporter. Saying what? Saying the original concept for Ashworth Tower came from your firm, and implying you may have deliberately sabotaged the engineering before he left to work with Marcus. He's trying to paint this as revenge. That's insane. I haven't touched that project since before the wedding. I know that. You know that. But right now it's your name getting dragged through headlines alongside Marcus's collapse, and that's a problem. What do we do? You have the original files, right? Dated, filed, before Daniel ever left the firm. Everything's archived. Every revision, every calculation, time-stamped. Then we're going to prove it. Today. 3 hours later, I sat in Priya's office with Isabel beside me, a folder of documentation spread across the table. Original blueprints filed 18 months before the Ashworth pitch, engineering calculations with my signature and the date, correspondence showing Daniel requesting server access 2 weeks before he left the firm. This is airtight, Priya said, flipping through the pages. Every stamp, every date. This proves the corrected engineering was yours, completed and filed before Daniel ever touched it. I want this out today, I said. Not to destroy anyone, just to set the record straight. I already drafted a statement, Isabel said, sliding a page across the table. Clean, factual, no accusations. Just documentation and dates. Let the facts speak. I read it over once, then signed off. By that evening, 3 major industry publications had run the story with the documentation attached. The headlines shifted overnight. Original engineer cleared. Documents show stolen designs behind Ashworth collapse. My phone didn't stop buzzing for the rest of the night. Congratulations from colleagues. Grace calling twice, practically shouting with relief. Even Whitfield sent a short message. Told you. Build, don't burn. The truth does the rest. Marcus's name, meanwhile, was everywhere for all the wrong reasons. Investors pulling funding publicly. A second building under his firm flagged for inspection. Whispers of fraud charges. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something quieter, relief, maybe, that I'd never had to lift a hand against him to watch it fall apart. Then, at nearly midnight, my phone buzzed one more time. A number I hadn't seen in 8 months. Sophia, I know I have no right to reach out. But can we talk? Please. Just once. I stared at the screen for a long time. Isabel, still in my office finishing paperwork, glanced over. Everything okay? It's Sophia. Her eyebrows lifted. First time since the wedding. First time since the wedding. What does she want? To talk. Isabel didn't say anything right away, just watched my face carefully. How do you feel about that? I thought about it honestly, turning the question over instead of rushing an answer. Part of me still feels something when I see her name. Old habits, maybe. Memories that don't just disappear because I built a new life. And the other part? The other part remembers she chose him over me and stayed quiet while Daniel and Marcus stole everything I built. She didn't reach out when the rumors started. She didn't reach out during the scandal. She's reaching out now, when his world is falling apart and mine is standing stronger than ever. That timing tells you something. It tells me exactly what I need to know, I said, setting the phone face down on my desk. She's not looking for me. She's looking for an exit. Are you going to answer her? I looked at the phone, then back at the documentation still spread across my desk, proof of everything I'd rebuilt with my own hands, without her, without Daniel, without anyone handing me a shortcut. Eventually, I said, but not tonight, and not because I'm still hers to run back to. Isabel smiled slightly, gathering her things. You've come a long way from the guy who used to stare out that window looking like he lost everything. I did lose everything, I said. For a while. But I built something better out of the wreckage. I looked at Sophia's message one more time before locking my phone. Whatever she wanted to say, whatever explanation she thought she owed me, it wouldn't change the man I'd become in the months since she walked away. That man didn't need her validation anymore. He'd already found his own. I chose the coffee shop near my old office, neutral ground, somewhere that held no memories for either of us. Sophia was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window, thinner than I remembered, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup she wasn't drinking from. Ethan. She stood up like she wasn't sure if she should hug me or not. I sat down across from her instead, and she lowered herself back into her chair. You look good, she said. Thanks. I mean it. Successful. Happy, even. I am happy, I said. What did you want to talk about, Sophia? She wrapped both hands around her cup again, like she needed something to hold on to. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not a text message. Okay. What I did to you, leaving you at the altar, marrying Marcus that same day, there's no excuse for it. I've had 8 months to think about it, and I still don't have a good answer for why I did it. Try me. She took a breath. I think I convinced myself that Marcus offered something safer, flashier. He had that energy like nothing could touch him, like he'd already won at everything. You were steady, and I mistook steady for boring. And now? Now I know steady means something completely different than I thought. Her voice cracked slightly. Marcus's world is falling apart, Ethan. The lawsuits, the investors pulling out, the way he talks to me when things go wrong, it's not what I thought I was choosing. I'm sorry you're going through that, I said, and I meant it, even if the sympathy stopped short of anything deeper. Are you? She asked. Because from where I'm sitting, everything you built since the wedding, it's incredible. Grace told me about the Riverside project, about Priya backing your firm, about Isabel. Grace talks too much. She's protective of you. I understand why. Sophia leaned forward slightly. Ethan, I know I have no right to ask this, but is there any chance at all, that we could try again? I made a horrible mistake. I know that now. I want to fix it. The question hung in the air between us, and for a moment, I let myself actually consider it. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who stood at that altar 3 years into a relationship, believing loyalty and love were the same thing, believing steady meant safe. That man might have said yes. Sophia, I said slowly, I need you to understand something. The man you're asking to come back doesn't exist anymore. What do you mean? I mean the Ethan who stood at that altar waiting for you, the one who built his whole identity around making you happy, around being enough for someone who was already looking for an exit. That version of me died the day you sent that text. Ethan, let me finish. I kept my voice steady, not angry, just clear. I spent months falling apart after that day, drinking too much, losing my business partner, watching everything I built almost collapse. And somewhere in the middle of that wreckage, I found something I never had before. I found out who I am when I'm not trying to be enough for someone else. Her eyes were wet now, but I kept going, gently, because she deserved honesty more than she deserved comfort. I built a firm from nothing. I learned to trust people who actually deserve it. I stopped needing anyone's approval to know my own worth. That man, the one sitting across from you right now, is not the same person who was easy enough to leave at an altar. I know I hurt you, she whispered. You did. But I'm not telling you this to hurt you back. I'm telling you because it's the truth. Coming back to you would mean going backward, and I've worked too hard to become who I am now. So that's it? There's no chance. There's no chance, I said, and for the first time since the wedding, saying those words didn't feel like loss. It felt like closure. I hope you figure out what you actually want, Sophia. I hope you find peace, whatever that looks like for you. But it's not going to be with me. She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. I believe you, I said. I forgive you. But forgiving you and going back to you aren't the same thing. I stood up, leaving enough money on the table to cover both our coffees, and walked out without looking back. Not because I was angry, because I finally didn't need to look back anymore. 3 months later, I stood outside the Riverside building, its glass facade catching the late afternoon sun, ribbons stretched across the entrance for the grand opening. You nervous? Grace asked, straightening my collar like she used to before every important moment in my life. A little. You shouldn't be. This building is going to house 40 families who couldn't afford anywhere else in this city. That's not nervous territory. That's proud territory. My father stood beside her, hands in his pockets, looking at the building with an expression I hadn't seen from him in a long time. Your mother would have loved this, he said quietly. I know. Priya approached with Isabel beside her, both dressed for the occasion, both wearing the kind of smile that came from watching something impossible become real. Ready? Priya asked. Ready, I said. Isabel handed me the ceremonial scissors, and as I stepped toward the ribbon, I let myself think back to that church 3 years and 1 lifetime ago, the empty aisle, the whispered gasps, the walk out those doors alone. I used to think that day ended my life. Now I understood it had only ended the version of me that needed someone else to complete him. The scissors cut cleanly through the ribbon, and the small crowd applauded, and I stood there surrounded by the people who actually stayed, my sister, my father, my friends, the family I'd built instead of the one that walked away. The worst day of my life hadn't destroyed me. It had built me, and for the first time since that empty aisle, I finally understood the difference.